What if giving just $3 to a stranger turned your entire life upside down? She didn't know he was a millionaire in disguise. She didn't know the world was watching. But in that moment, she showed what real kindness looks like. And in the next hour, 5 black cars would come to find her. The fluorescent lights buzzed softly above the checkout lanes, casting a pale glow over rows of carts and tired faces. Rachel stood in line, her arms wrapped around a small basket. Eggs, milk, bread, and a cheap off-brand cereal her daughter loved. Her jacket was 2 winters old, her shoes scuffed at the toes, but her face carried a kind of quiet resilience that made strangers smile and never ask why. Ahead of her, a man fumbled through his wallet. His coat was frayed, his beard uneven, his hands shaking slightly as he counted change with too many apologies. The cashier, young and impatient, tapped her nails against the register. "Sir, you're short. It's $3.20 more." The man's face fell. He reached into his pocket again, found nothing. "Maybe I can put something back," he mumbled, glancing down at the few items. Just rice, canned soup, and a pack of medicine. The people behind Rachel sighed loudly. Someone muttered, "Unbelievable." Another, louder, said, "Should have figured." Rachel didn't move at first. Then, without a word, she stepped forward, reached into her wallet, and slid a crumpled $5 bill across the counter. "I've got it," she said softly. The man turned to protest, eyes wide. "No, really, She cut him off gently. "It's okay. I've been there." He stared at her for a long second, like he wanted to say more, like something inside him cracked, then nodded once, eyes glossy, and whispered, "Thank you." The cashier rolled her eyes but rang it up. Rachel smiled, picked up her basket, and stepped out into the cold without waiting for anything in return. She never saw the man still watching her as she disappeared into the parking lot. She never saw him pull out a sleek black phone from his inner coat pocket. No scratches, no cracks. Never saw the way his posture shifted from slouch to sharp, precise, and practiced. Never heard him say quietly into the receiver, "Found one. Real deal." She didn't hesitate. And Rachel. She walked home in the cold with a plastic bag in one hand, her daughter's cereal crinkling inside, unaware that a ripple had just begun, one that would turn her entire world upside down. The apartment door creaked open with a tired groan as Rachel stepped inside, the wind chasing her heels before she shut it tight behind her. The walls were thin, the heat barely worked, and the light above the stove flickered with a faint buzz. But it was home. "Mommy," a soft voice called from the bedroom. And out came Lily, 7 years old, wearing pajamas 2 sizes too big and socks with holes in both heels. Her hair was wild with sleep, her eyes bright with hope. Rachel smiled, setting the bag on the counter, pulling out the off-brand cereal like it was a treasure. "They had your favorite?" she said. Lily gasped like it was Christmas, grabbing the box and spinning with it, not knowing it had cost her mother the last of this week's spare cash. Rachel didn't say a word. She never did. She just warmed up leftover soup, helped Lily with her homework, then tucked her into bed with a bedtime story about brave little girls who could change the world. When Lily finally drifted off, Rachel sat alone at the kitchen table with the lights off, a stack of unpaid bills in front of her like ghosts whispering in ink. Rent is past due, electricity warning, a note from the school about a field trip she couldn't afford. She stared at them in silence, rubbing her temples, willing herself not to cry. She'd been here before, so many times, a dead-end job at the register, a night shift cleaning offices. She slept 4 hours a night and still couldn't breathe without checking her bank account. But she never complained, never begged, never gave less than her best, because someone had to show Lily what strength looked like. Down the hall, the radiator coughed, pipes clanged, a neighbor shouted through paper-thin walls. Rachel sat in the dark, her head in her hands, exhausted beyond words, but still thinking about that man at the grocery store. The way his eyes had filled with something raw, the way he'd looked at her like no one ever had before, not with pity, but with something else. She didn't know his name, didn't need to, Kindness didn't come with receipts, and somewhere across the city, in a luxury hotel suite overlooking the skyline, Elliot Ford stood by the window in a suit worth more than Rachel's yearly income, watching her name appear on his tablet beside a single note from his assistant candidate identified. No hesitation, pure intent. He stared at the photo attached. Rachel, blurry in the grocery store, handing over that wrinkled $5 bill like it was nothing. His fingers hovered above the screen. Then he spoke 2 words into his earpiece. Follow her. The test had just begun, and Rachel had no idea the kindness she gave away so easily was about to come back in ways she never could have imagined. The morning unfolded in shades of gray, the sky low and heavy as Rachel stepped onto the cracked sidewalk outside her building, her breath rising in soft clouds, her coat pulled tight against a chill that sank deeper than skin. The bus groaned to a stop, doors sighing open, and she boarded with the same quiet rhythm she had every day, taking her usual seat by the window, her fingers curled around a paper cup of weak coffee she'd made at home to save a few dollars. The city moved around her in a blur, honking horns, tired faces, people chasing time they never seemed to catch. But Rachel didn't rush. She just watched, thought, wondered why doing something kind felt so heavy now. When she arrived at the store, the air felt different. She felt it before she saw it. The way heads turned, the half-second pauses in conversation when she passed, the smirks hiding behind fake smiles. Something had shifted. As she reached the break room to clock in, Jen leaned against the doorframe, sipping a soda with a grin that didn't reach her eyes. "So you're a hero now," she said casually. "Heard you paid for some loser yesterday." "That's true." Rachel blinked. He was short a few dollars. "It wasn't a big deal." Jen snorted. "Please." The guy looked homeless. "And you, what?" Pulled out your magic $5 bill like some fairy godmother. Another coworker joined in. "Next time, maybe you can pay for all of us, since you're apparently the Mother Teresa of aisle 4. Laughter, not cruel, but cutting." Rachel smiled softly, the kind that says everything and nothing at once. "I just thought it was the right thing to do." But the whispers didn't stop. They followed her down the aisles, wrapped around corners, stuck to her like dust. One of the assistant managers pulled her aside and mentioned something vague about company image and slowing down the line. She nodded, apologized, said she understood. But inside, something twisted. It was just $3, just a moment, just a choice. And now it was being dissected like a scandal. During her break, she sat alone in the back room, staring at her lunch, a half sandwich wrapped in foil, while the others huddled together laughing about a video someone found online. No one invited her over. No one asked her how she was. The kindness she'd given without a second thought had somehow become a spotlight she never asked for. After her shift, as the sun dipped below the buildings and the wind picked up, Rachel stepped out into the dusk with her hands buried in her coat pockets, her head low, her heart tired. The city lights blinked on one by one, and for a moment, she felt something strange. A chill that wasn't just the air, like eyes on her, like someone was watching. She turned slowly, but the sidewalk behind her was empty. Still, the feeling lingered. Across the street, in a parked black SUV with windows tinted like ink, Elliot Ford sat motionless, eyes locked on her figure as she disappeared around the corner. His voice, calm and deliberate, broke the silence inside the car. She didn't defend herself, didn't brag, didn't expect anything back. "That's how you know." The driver said nothing, only nodded. Rachel continued walking, unaware. To her, it had been just a long, strange day. But to Elliot, it had been proof. And tomorrow, he would make his move. The next morning arrived not with alarm clocks or bird song, but with the low, slow hum of engines rolling across cracked pavement. 5 black vehicles, gleaming like obsidian, pulling into the modest parking lot of the grocery store where Rachel worked. Heads turned immediately. Employees peeked through windows. Customers paused mid-step, and conversations stopped mid-sentence. The doors of the lead SUV opened in perfect synchronicity, and from it stepped a man no one recognized at first. Tailored coat, polished shoes, posture that commanded attention like a conductor stepping onto a silent stage. He walked calmly toward the entrance, ignoring the stares, the whispers, the questions. His name was Elliot Ford, though here, few would know it. But in boardrooms across continents, his name moved mountains, closed deals, and built empires. Inside, Rachel was just finishing her morning stock run, sleeves pushed up, hair tied back, her hands still chilled from the cold produce section. She hadn't seen the cars, hadn't noticed the ripple outside. She was wiping down a display case when the automatic doors whooshed open and the air changed. Something about the silence, the way the room held its breath. She turned slowly, the cloth still in her hand, and froze. Elliot's eyes found hers instantly. He smiled. Not the kind of smile that sells things, but the kind that sees things, the kind that remembers. Rachel blinked, confused, trying to place him, not recognizing the scruffy man from the grocery line beneath the crisp confidence and impossible calm. She stepped forward hesitantly. "Can I help you?" she asked. He stopped 3 feet from her, then spoke with a voice that cut through the room like glass through silk. "Actually, I'm here to help you." Behind him, the other cars remained still, their engines low like distant thunder. Jen peeked from the side aisle, jaw slack. The manager rushed over, nervous. "Sir, if you're looking for corporate, I can—" But Elliot raised a hand, calm, unshakable. "I'm not here for business. I'm here for someone who didn't hesitate, someone who gave when she had nothing to gain, someone who reminded me of what real wealth looks like." Rachel's throat tightened. "Wait, you're—" Elliot nodded slowly. "That man in line, that moment. You didn't know who I was, and that's exactly why it mattered." He turned, gesturing to the others waiting behind tinted glass. "My name is Elliot Ford. I own this chain. I own this building. And as of this morning, I've made arrangements to ensure you never have to choose between kindness and survival again." The room erupted in stunned silence. Not applause, not noise, just stunned, gaping disbelief. And Rachel, she just stood there, frozen, cloth still in hand, heart pounding, unable to breathe, the world tilting beneath her feet as everything she thought she knew about who matters and what kindness is suddenly shattered and rebuilt in a single breath. She had given away $3, and now the world had come back to give her everything. Rachel stood motionless, the stained cleaning rag still clutched in her hand, her lips parted as if trying to form words that didn't exist yet, her heartbeat thudding so loudly in her ears that the world around her blurred into muffled silence. Elliot's words echoed, "I own this building. I own this chain. I came for someone who didn't hesitate." The fluorescent lights above buzzed faintly, the store frozen like a paused film reel, co-workers peeking from behind aisles, phones silently raised by stunned customers, mouths agape, not a single person daring to interrupt the moment unfolding before them. Jen stood near the registers, her face pale, her usual smirk erased, eyes darting between Elliot and Rachel like she was watching a dream unravel into something dangerously real. The manager stammered, "Mr. Ford, I had no idea." But Elliot didn't even look at him. His gaze never left Rachel. And then, calmly, deliberately, he pulled a folded document from his coat and handed it to her. She took it with shaking hands, unfolding the pages with disbelief as she scanned the elegant letterhead, the golden logo, the bold black print, permanent corporate employment offer, Ford Enterprises. Beside it, a second letter, full housing relocation, approved. And below that, educational scholarship, awarded to dependent Lily Rose Whitman. Rachel's knees almost gave out. "No," she whispered, voice trembling. I didn't do it for—" Elliot stepped closer, gently cutting her off with a voice like steady fire. "That's exactly why you're standing here now. You gave without knowing. You gave without expecting. And you reminded me that the truest test of character is not how we treat those above us, but how we treat those we believe are beneath us." Tears welled in her eyes. The weight of years of struggle, of invisible sacrifice, crashing down in a single moment that felt like both justice and mercy. Around them, the store came back to life. Oak, gasps, murmurs, co-workers watching with shame on their faces as the woman they mocked was honored by the man who could buy everything they owned 100 times over. Jen stepped forward, voice shaking. "Rachel, I didn't know he was—" Rachel looked at her, eyes soft but clear, and said nothing, because kindness didn't need to gloat. Elliot smiled, just slightly, then turned to the press that had quietly entered behind him, their cameras rolling, their lenses focused. "Let this be a reminder," he said, voice firm, measured, echoing through the space. "Character is not built in boardrooms. It's revealed in checkout lines. And today, we saw the richest soul in this building, wasn't wearing a suit. And in that moment, the applause finally came, the one not from the media, not from the executives, but from everyday people in the store, clapping slowly, rising, louder, real. Rachel wiped her tears with the back of her hand, her daughter's face flashing through her mind. She had given away $3, and now her entire world had changed. The applause still echoed through the aisles, but Rachel could barely hear it over the sound of her heartbeat as she stood in the center of a store she once scrubbed clean after hours, now transformed into the stage of something unthinkable. Elliot turned slightly, nodded toward the entrance, and the glass doors parted once again as a black car silently pulled up to the curb. Sleek, foreign, glowing beneath the morning sun like something out of a dream. A sharply dressed woman stepped out, holding a small folder, heels clicking on the tile with purpose. She approached Rachel with a gentle smile and handed her the folder. "Miss Whitman," she said softly, "inside you'll find the keys to your new apartment. Fully furnished, 6 months prepaid, with the option to purchase. Your daughter's scholarship documents are also included. And this," she held up a slim black card, "is your transitional stipend, loaded and active. You can use it immediately." Rachel took it in stunned silence, her hands trembling as if the card might vanish if she blinked too hard. Behind her, the murmurs turned into disbelief. The same co-workers who mocked her generosity now stood frozen in their uniforms, watching the woman they called foolish be given more than any of them could dream of. Then Elliot turned to the manager. "You pulled her aside, didn't you? Said she made your line too slow, that she was a liability." The manager's mouth opened, closed, and no words came out. "You'll be stepping down," Elliot said calmly. "Effective immediately. Someone who punishes compassion has no place in leadership." Gasps. Rachel stepped forward instinctively, whispering, "Wait, please." All eyes turned to her. Elliot raised an eyebrow. "You're defending him." Rachel looked at the manager, red-faced, humiliated, clutching a clipboard like a shield, and said, "I'm not defending what he did. But maybe he just needed to see what kindness looks like. Maybe now he has." Her voice didn't shake. It was soft, steady, powerful. Let him stay. Let him learn. The silence that followed was heavier than anything that had come before it. Elliot studied her for a long moment, then nodded once. "You really are extraordinary." Rachel turned back toward the co-workers who had laughed, scoffed, and whispered behind her back. They wouldn't meet her eyes now. One by one, their expressions shifted. From guilt to awe to something resembling shame. And Rachel, with nothing but dignity in her spine, said only this: "Be better. That's all I ask." And as she stepped outside into the light, the crowd parting around her like water around a ship, she wasn't just walking away from a job. She was walking into a new world, one she had never expected, never asked for, but had earned with nothing more than quiet, unseen grace. And behind her, Elliot watched with something rare in his chest: hope. Because in a world obsessed with noise, Rachel had shown what silence, kindness, and selflessness could still do. The air outside felt different, warmer, clearer, almost sacred. As Rachel stepped into the sunlight, the folder pressed to her chest like a lifeline, the black card still clutched in her hand, her breath catching as the magnitude of it all finally began to settle in her bones. She stood there for a moment, just breathing, trying to convince herself she was still awake, that this wasn't some fragile daydream destined to vanish. Behind her, the store faded into background noise, the stunned silence of those who had laughed at her, now swallowed by their own disbelief. But she didn't turn around. She didn't need to. She knew who she was now, and it wasn't defined by uniforms or whispered mockery. It was built in the quiet, unseen moments when no one was looking. The black car door opened, and Elliot stepped beside her, no longer distant or formal, just a man who had seen something rare and refused to walk away from it. "There's something I'd like you to see," he said, voice low but certain. She nodded, wordless, and slid into the leather seat, the door closing with a hush that felt like the final page of an old chapter, turning. They drove through the city in silence, the skyline folding around them like a cathedral of steel and memory, until they reached a towering building with mirrored glass and a quiet kind of majesty. At the top floor, Elliot led her down a private corridor to a wide, sunlit room filled with soft music and rows of faces. Men, women, children, all seated, all waiting. The moment Rachel entered, they turned, and one by one, they began to stand. At the front, a woman in a gray dress stepped forward, tears already brimming. "I know you," she whispered. "Years ago, I was at a shelter. You were volunteering. I had nothing. You gave me your coat. You don't remember me, but I never forgot you." More faces stepped forward, more voices. A man who had once slept on a bench she passed daily, a teenager she had defended during a bus altercation, a mother she'd shared groceries with after overhearing her crying on the phone. Each of them. Lives she had touched without fanfare, without reward. Elliot stepped beside her, voice thick. "I didn't just research your past. I followed the footprints your kindness left behind. And this," he gestured to the room, "is what I found. This is your legacy, Rachel. Not a paycheck, not a promotion, but people who stand today because you did." Her hand flew to her mouth, a sob rising uninvited. She had never asked for this, never sought applause. But now, surrounded by strangers who remembered what she had given them when she had so little, she saw the truth with blinding clarity. Kindness never disappears. It plants roots in silence, then blooms in places you least expect. And in that room, where gratitude filled the air like light, Rachel was no longer just a woman who once gave $3. She was a force, a spark, a reason, and her story was only just beginning. The room quieted as Rachel stepped forward, eyes still glistening, heart pounding like a drum in a sacred hall, her hands trembling not from fear, but from the overwhelming weight of being seen. Not for what she had, but for who she was. Elliot gently motioned toward the podium, a simple wooden stand now transformed by the gravity of what she represented. She hesitated for just a moment, then walked toward it, the room parting in reverent silence, every gaze fixed on her, not with pity or admiration, but with something purer, recognition. She stood behind the microphone, took a deep breath, and began to speak, her voice soft, steady, carrying the weight of 1,000 unseen acts of goodness. "I didn't grow up with much," she said, the words falling like raindrops on dry earth, "and I never expected the world to give me anything. But I learned early on that kindness doesn't cost what people think it does. It's not about money. It's not about recognition. It's about what you choose to do when no one's clapping." A hush fell deeper across the room as she looked around, her gaze meeting face after face, each one changed by her presence. "I didn't pay for that man's groceries because I thought it would come back to me. I did it because he needed help. And because once upon a time, I stood where he stood, hoping someone might see me." She paused, the emotion catching in her throat, but she pushed through it. We live in a world that moves fast, that values loudness, power, image, but the real power, the kind that heals, that builds, that saves lives. That power lives in the quiet. It lives in the people who give their last $5 without thinking twice, in those who listen, In those who refuse to walk past suffering just because it's inconvenient, she glanced at Elliot then, just for a moment, and he nodded with quiet pride. "I'm not here because I'm special," she said, her voice tightening. "I'm here because I refuse to believe that kindness was weakness. I'm here because I chose to give, even when I had so little left. And I'm telling you now, there are millions of people like me, good people, invisible people. People who show up, who endure, who love without asking for a receipt. They're not on stages, but they're everywhere, and they matter." Silence again, thick and reverent. Then she closed her eyes briefly, took one last breath, and said, "So, if you take anything from this, let it be. This kindness is not a transaction. It's not a shortcut to praise. It's a promise you make to the world when no one is watching. And when you make it enough times, the world watches anyway." She stepped back. The crowd didn't erupt. Oh, they rose. Every person stood, hands over hearts, some wiping tears. The room filled not with noise, but with the quiet thunder of lives being shifted. Rachel looked out over them and realized this wasn't just a thank you, it was a beginning, and the kindness she had given freely, without expectation, had returned not as a reward, but as a revolution. Months passed, but the moment never faded. The memory of Rachel standing at that podium, voice trembling but unshakable, had spread far beyond that sunlit room. News outlets picked it up, influencers shared it, and her words. Kindness is not a transaction, it's a promise, had been etched into the hearts of millions who had long forgotten what quiet goodness looked like. But Rachel didn't chase the spotlight. She declined interviews. She turned down sponsorships. Instead, she built something. In a modest downtown office with peeling paint and borrowed chairs, she launched the Second Line Foundation. Named after the checkout line where it all began, its mission was simple: to help those who fell through the cracks, or single parents, struggling teens, underpaid workers, the overlooked, the exhausted, the nearly invisible. And every morning, before the sun rose, Rachel showed up. Coffee in one hand, Lily's backpack in the other, smile as soft as ever. The world had changed. Yes, her life had changed, but her heart, it remained the same. One afternoon, as she helped a young mother fill out a housing application, a man entered the center. Well-dressed, nervous, holding a crumpled photograph. He looked around until his eyes landed on Rachel. He approached slowly, then handed her the picture. "You may not remember me," he said, voice cracking, "but years ago, you stopped on 5th Street to give me a sandwich. I didn't want it. I was too proud. But you didn't walk away. You sat beside me, and you listened." Rachel stared at the photo. It was him, older now, cleaned up, whole. That day, he continued, "I decided not to give up. I got sober, got a job, and now I volunteer here. I just wanted to say thank you." Again. Rachel didn't speak. She didn't need to. She reached out and hugged him, not as a public figure, not as a symbol, just as the same woman who once gave without asking anything in return. And behind her, watching quietly from the doorway, was Elliot, hands in his pockets, suit jacket open, eyes soft with the kind of pride that doesn't come from wealth, but from witnessing something holy. He'd kept his distance in the months since the reveal, not because he was unwelcome, but because he knew the story belonged to her now. Still, every so often, he'd show up, not to be seen, but to remember. Because Rachel had reminded him of something he had long buried beneath bank accounts and boardrooms, that impact doesn't always come from empires. Sometimes, it comes from someone handing over a few dollars in line and asking nothing in return. It was a rainy Thursday afternoon when Rachel found herself back in the very same grocery store where it all began, not because she had to be, but because Lily had forgotten her favorite snack for a school project, and Rachel, now with a car of her own and a calendar packed with board meetings and charity launches, still believed in doing the little things. The store hadn't changed much. The same flickering light above the entrance, the same dull linoleum floors, The same low hum of quiet transactions and tired cashiers. But Rachel had changed, not in appearance. She still wore her old jeans and a simple coat. But in the way she moved, the way people parted around her not out of fear, but out of respect. As she approached the checkout line, she saw a woman ahead of her. Hair frazzled, toddler in one arm, a few basic items on the belt, and panic etched deep into her features. The total flashed on the screen. Her card declined. Once, twice. The cashier sighed. The toddler cried. The woman's voice cracked as she whispered, "I'm so sorry. I thought there was enough." And Rachel didn't hesitate, not even for a second. She reached into her bag, pulled out a bill, and quietly handed it to the cashier. "I've got it," she said with a soft smile. The woman turned to protest, tears already welling. "You don't have to." But Rachel gently touched her arm. "I know." "But I want to." The woman stared at her, overwhelmed, speechless, and Rachel just nodded, a quiet reassurance in her eyes. She didn't explain who she was, didn't mention the black cars, the foundation, or the speech that had gone viral. She just stepped back and let the moment pass like it always should. With dignity. As she exited the store into the rain, the sky soft and gray, Lily's snack tucked under her arm, Rachel turned her face upward and smiled, because she knew what you give when no one's watching says more about who you are than anything that follows. And miles away, on a stage at a global summit, a young woman quoted Rachel's speech to a crowd of thousands. In a classroom, a teacher read her story aloud to students learning what kindness really meant. In a home across the ocean, a mother told her children about a woman who gave $3 and changed the world. She never asked for anything, but the world gave her everything. Because she gave first. So the next time you see someone struggling, remember her story. Because kindness doesn't cost much, but it can change everything. Would you have done what she did, or would you have walked away?